Thank you. Okay, that's loud, sorry. I'm delighted to be here, and I'm glad to be part of the data cultures in higher ed conversation because I think it's a really important one at this juncture. Yesterday I had the privilege of doing a workshop for UOC that specifically focused on datafication. So today I wanted to extend that conversation to something that is related to the problem and challenge that we have of our datafied system, but broader in the sense that it relates to the whole digital environment that we're currently in. And so my focus is on something that my partner Dave, who will be talking after and I call the Pro-social web, or the idea that the web can still be a social thing. I just wanted to invite folks in. Hi, welcome. We've got folks in the room and we've got folks online, but if you are online, this is a live slide, and I always just like to invite people in to use the tools at the top of their screen. You can either use the text box or the pencil, and if you want to let me know where you're based, where you're joining us from. I know a lot of people may be in Barcelona, but maybe everybody isn't, so always kind of nice to know. I am delighted to be in Barcelona myself. I'm just going to sort this mic out a little bit because my head is turned to see the slides, and there, I think that's a little bit better. So we've got a few folks in Barcelona, excellent. This is an absolutely amazing city. I had the privilege of taking my kids to La Sagrada Familia this morning. Wow, what a project, what an amazing thing. We did love it. I was really, really amazed by it, actually. Okay, someone's in Girona. Excellent. Well, welcome to everybody. I'm happy to have you here, and what I would like to talk about is the web, and how the web used to be kind of a fun project of watching cat videos, and now is not entirely just a fun project of watching cat videos, but rather monitoring the collapse of late-stage capitalism. This is the state that we are currently in, and I always like to ask, who in the room, show of hands, uses the web? Right, me too. Those of you online, there's a hand raised, thank you, perfect. We tend to use the web in this current time in spite of its flaws and challenges. But so much of our higher education infrastructure is currently digitized, right? Our student registration systems, our learning management systems, so much of what we do has been brought into a digital environment. It collects data, but this is not actually built on the foundations of early digital education. And by early, I'm really only talking like 10, 15 years ago. Currently, we're in a system where, as Rajiv Jangiani from Canada had tweeted a little while back, as textbook giants shift to all digital products that integrate homework, students are essentially forced to buy digital materials from publishers to turn in their assignments. And so we're creating all kinds of new problems and challenges, and the web, the promise of the web was meant to take us in a somewhat different direction, but what we've ended up, and you'll see this sort of circle down here, there's convenience for faculty sometimes in creating these large digital systems, but pedagogically and in terms of really what they do for our roles as instructors, this is not always a positive move. If we allow our digital systems to digitize everything that we do, we may all find ourselves out of jobs rather shortly. So, back in the day, how many people remember Web 2.0? I loved Web 2.0. Web 2.0 was the idea of the read-write web, right? That you could both consume information online and contribute information online. And that, if you posted something, I would read it and maybe comment on it. And then you might read my thing. And we would gradually come to know who each other were, as well as engaging with each other's materials. And that was one of the early promise pieces that was particularly powerful in bringing a lot of educators online. Because a lot of educators saw the promise of having their students be able to contribute to the web in a meaningful way. However, having digitized homework systems that Pearson makes money from that put teachers out of work doesn't do the same thing. And now, really what we're seeing is a system where, and I don't know if folks can see this in the room if it's big enough, but the web is something more like the 7 deadly sins. We have Tinder for lust, Yelp for gluttony, Twitter for wrath, that's my favorite, Netflix for sloth, LinkedIn for greed, Facebook for envy, Instagram for pride. And this isn't necessarily the amazing educational opportunity that I had thought I was bringing my students towards when I first bought into digital education a long time ago. And so sometimes I want to look at the trends that we're seeing in digital and data and unpack them and ask, what is the snake oil that we're being sold here? And I think we see it in a whole bunch of places. One of the first, and this was the subject of my talk yesterday, so I will only recap a tiny bit of this, but AI and machine learning and learning analytics provide some really interesting opportunities for education and for higher education. And there are ways in which they can be used well and can have important value in specific types of disciplines and learning areas. But they are being sold as a holistic type of, this is how we should look at learning. And datafication, the idea of it, promises us that if we can break information and ideas and human experience into enough data points, that we can make a map of the world as it really is, that if we can just get enough information, we will get all of it. But the truth of it is, all that we can actually measure with data tend to be the things that are particularly countable or visible in very specific ways. And we can't count all of the things that actually count in education. So I think that this particular idea of this map of the world that datafication promises is an important piece of snake oil, particularly in education, because it risks turning learners into essentially data, right? It risks turning everything that we do educationally into what can be counted. And that's my major concern. This was the subject of yesterday's workshop. Also concerns surveillance, data extraction, technocracy, and this is a line from Sophia Noble's Algorithms of Oppression, a great 2018 book that I highly recommend. She says, information organizations, from libraries to schools and universities to governmental agencies, are increasingly being displaced by a variety of web-based tools as if there are no political, social, or economic consequences for doing so. And that's deeply concerning because our public institutions, both in the educational sense and more broadly, have always held some concept of the public good, whereas datafied information systems do not, right? And if we turn over too much power to those systems without considering what we're doing, then we risk losing that whole core of the project that many of us believe that we're in. Another concern, polarization and radicalization. The YouTube recommender engine, right, is known to be an engine of sort of radicalizing, particularly in North America, young white men who are in their basement. They see some kind of cool conspiracy theory video. They're kind of interested, kind of intrigued, kind of want to position themselves as edgy, and then they end up seeing the next thing that it recommends, and the next thing, and the next thing, and there is documented evidence that many of who are the young people who are particularly now sort of the alt-right, this is kind of how they fell into this hole and this reality. So yay, this is a picture of a cat carrying a kitten away. Sometimes it feels like maybe that is enough internet for today. My concern is that we have handed over a lot of control of our data and our identities and our shared public infrastructures, and including democracy, to AI, to datafied systems, to concepts like machine learning, based on this promise of sort of knowing it all. But I think it's really important that we consider alternatives. And again, that participatory idea of Web 2.0, now it's a shame because these are on PDF, so you can't see my very favorite GIF of all time. The little girl on the left repeatedly pushes the little girl on the right out of the little scooter that they're in. But participation did basically get pushed out of the picture of digital education with the rise of datafication. And yet, participation and connection still matter. And I still think it's the core of why people keep connecting on the web. These tweets are excerpts from something that I ran a couple of years ago, which was a hashtag around the idea of Antigonish 2, or an adult ed movement bringing people together from all over the world to kind of put our elbow in the systems that were beginning to seem oppressive at the time. And what people kept commenting on and bringing forward was that their experience of being online as connected educators was around caring and connecting and other humans. And so I'm interested in the idea of a web that allows us to care and connect while recognizing that the web is not a perfect place. And the other thing that I talked about yesterday was something that Juliana and I are working on, and it's the Cynefin framework, or Snowden and Boone's 2007 model for decision making. And in the Cynefin framework, you have 4 domains of problems. And what we've ultimately come down to is that a great deal of both education generally, but also this datafication problem is really around, we live in a complex environment, and we live in a time of increasing complexity, right? We need more and more today, you need to have a systems understanding of the world, and you need to be able to make sense of multiple complex systems at the same time, even when they conflict with each other. But with complexity, there are many factors to always factor in, right? That's one of the things about complexity that is real. And the truth of it is that when we try to overlay these kind of datafied systems that often reduce a great deal of a learning experience to what is countable, we're trying to put complicated solutions over complex problems. And so that was really the gist of our conversation yesterday. My interest is in dealing with the web through a pedagogy of complexity. So if you have an educational problem that you want to solve, first question, is this a complicated problem or a complex problem? And looking and using that Cynefin framework as a guide can be a really great tool, either for sorting out what you want to do educationally, or for talking to the decision maker or your senior administrator who's trying to impose a complicated solution on something that's actually a complex problem. Now, sometimes there is a need for big data or for AI, right? We had a colleague from Turkey who was with us yesterday. He has 1 million students in a distance university. They need some way of designing systems by which they can have communicative touches and answer those students' questions, because nobody can answer 1 million questions at scale. But the process of deciding how you determine whether a question is an education question, an administrative question, a social random question, right? How do you design that decision tree so that it doesn't reduce the meaning out of that situation or become the only, excuse me, the only contact that students have as their learning experience? And the third is the one that's really interesting to me. What paths are available? What alternate paths are available for problem solving that don't go to a datafied system? And because I don't work in a university with 1 million people, I work in a fairly small Canadian university. I have reasonably small classes. I have the privilege of being able to try to build something that I kind of call open digital practice with my students, bringing them back into the participatory world of the web as a way of thinking about building citizens who aren't going to just buy the promise of datafication and AI easily. My students will all be teachers. So for me, it is very, very important when I'm teaching teachers of the future to encourage them to think about the web not just as data and information and a tool to do something, but as a place where people can connect and participate and where their students can contribute to knowledge. And so the idea behind this is called the Pro-social Web, and this is something that I think Dave came up with this. Let's go with that. It was you, wasn't it? It was probably Dave. I'm sure Dave. If it's a bad idea, it's definitely Dave. But it might be, otherwise it might be me. I'm uncertain. But no, the idea of just focusing on the aspects of the web where people have the opportunity to engage with each other in ways that are not going to get them trolled or made unsafe, but that are also not just going to expose them to data collection, but give them a critical, hands-on experience and appreciation for some of what the web still can offer. And so I want to give you a quick showcase on my pet project of the past year, which is something called the Open Page and its sub-project, the You-Win Tool Parade. And You-Win is meant to be kind of a play on words because we work at University of Windsor, or U-Windsor, so everything has You-Win in front of it, but it's also meant to be like, you win, yay. We didn't make that part up, I know. It's kind of, I admit, fair enough. It's meant to be really, ultimately, it's a faculty development project, it's a professional development project, it's a student project, and it is a data literacies project, all wrapped up together. Because my problem was that I want my student teachers, who are going to be teachers, to learn about digital tools that are out there. That's part of my job. I teach courses where they have to do projects and kind of look at classroom tools like Kahoot or Mentimeter or Padlet or Twitter. Will I use this in my class? And most teachers, when they go to think about whether they would use a tool in their class, maybe they go across the hall and they talk to another teacher and they say, well, how does this work? But mostly they don't use the tool because the learning curve feels too high and they're not sure where to go to get that information. And this is true for my pre-service teachers. It's true for the teachers in the kindergarten through grade 12 schools in Canada, at least, and that they go out and do their practice teaching with. And it's true for my faculty colleagues, who are often not modeling these tools for the pre-service teachers because they're like, oh, I'm too busy. So I said, what if we did a tool parade, meaning short, deeply condensed 3-minute, maybe 4-minute videos to show people kind of how this would work. Showcasing different tools, but critically, from that teacher-to-teacher kind of overview perspective. So speaking about something, but saying, nah, I'm not super happy with this. This isn't really very educational. This is just shiny. But you can use this part to really help students who might have a learning disability or who might have a challenge with processing, so that you're condensing a whole pile of information, right? We're doing the research so that educators don't have to. And in doing it, I also wanted my students to learn a great deal about data. So we designed this so that basically the students are learning contribution and collaboration on the open web. The students are contributing these videos to the web, and they are also sharing them as professional development objects with real teachers in schools that they would like to be hired by. So it gives the students a chance to kind of showcase their own expertise as educators and be like, hey, hire me. But they also get to do the same thing with faculty members. All of these videos ultimately will be housed. This is our Faculty of Education page, and we have a brand new link called the Open page that now exists and is live off of our university site. And so it houses these videos, which are the tool parade, but it's also going to include these professional development sessions for teachers, parent engagement sessions that are designed and hosted by students, and I've got a whole other class of students who are using these videos as their textbook so that they can create podcasts to then contribute back to the Open page. So that the whole thing is this circular creation for the web and use of the web in very real ways. The tone of it, like I said, it's a teacher-to-teacher open overview. We're not trying to be vendors or pushers of any technology. We're trying to take a very kind of elbow patches perspective and just talk to people as like, well, you know, you might want to consider this. But our real focus is what can you do with it in the classroom, but then what are its data implications? What does it, we read the 17-page terms of service and all the details and try to collapse that down so that if you're watching a tool parade video, you can very, very quickly get a sense, of whether you want to bring students into that platform or not and what the overall implications are. To be able to do that, I was surprised. I had a huge learning curve myself. I don't usually read the terms of service for everything. Sorry, shocking, I apologize. I'm truthfully, they're really hard to read and I'm not sure they're meant to be read. And the more that I brought students in there and had them try to unpack, okay, what are the risks here? A number of times they just didn't, they were totally off on their first reading because they're just not, those terms of service are not geared for the average person, even a very literate teacher, to make sense of. And that was disturbing and kind of sad to realize, but totally true. So deep, deep dive into the data end of things. Plus, again, at least in North America, differentiated learning is a really important part of our Bachelor of Education program. We want our teachers to go out into schools able to see the different needs and strengths of different students and adapt kind of their learning plans to accommodate and serve as many students as possible. And sometimes digital tools can do a really good job of that. So a part of each video is the data implications, and a part of each video and podcast will be, and here's how you can use this for students who are language learners. Here's how you can use this for students who have reading challenges, etc. Basically, in the end, when we're done at the end of this year, the Open page will have 12 to 15 videos, all covering separate tools, 10 to 12 podcasts, different tools again, plus lesson plans and resources for all of them. And they are all openly licensed. We can get this set up is two of my students, Olivia and Alicia, and they are doing a showdown of Canva versus Pictochart. I don't know if any of you have ever used, they're both infographic software, and did that work okay? Yeah. Super. So we're just gonna hit play, and then we can make it large.
Welcome to the UN Tool Parade, the teacher-to-teacher open overview of what EdTech can do for you. Coming from the University of Windsor's Faculty of
Yeah, the computer is not mic'd in,
I'm
is it?
Olivia, and today we have a showdown between the most popular infographic platform.
Sorry.
Pictochart.
Infographics have become increasingly popular among big business,
that's
news
okay.
outlets, and educators. They're often used to express information, complex ideas, even stats and data, using short text, images, or charts.
Canva and Pictochart are both web-based applications in which the users are allowed to create infographics and visuals using the software's templates and graphics.
The only thing these platforms require to sign up is an email, which most students have through their schools. Once logged in, they've access to templates, backgrounds, graphics, and more. But this is where the showdown starts. And the platforms begin to differ.
PictoChart guides you through its features using screen prompts the first time you log in, giving you a brief tutorial. The platform's main purpose is to create infographics, though it can be used to create posters, flyers, and even fancy charts, which can range across the curriculum.
Canva,
That's
on the
okay.
other
I
hand,
don't need to
wasn't
show you the
primarily
whole thing.
built for
That's totally
infographics.
all right.
It was originally made for
They also
posters,
do
social
have
media
captions
posts, and
on YouTube, but
promotional
what we
materials.
wanted to do
But it's
was
since
have
delved
the
into
students
realm
go
of
through the
infographics and
process.
has made some
Can you turn the
templates that
video
can
off?
compete with other infographic software.
Go through
Canva
the
offers
process of designing for the web, designing real artifacts for the web, as well as doing the critical evaluation process of these are the 4 students who worked with me closest on the initial design of the Tool Parade videos that then form the textbook, both for faculty to also make videos. So this young man, Leo Anthony, he consulted with faculty, and we got faculty making some videos as well, so that the faculty videos and the student videos will show up mixed together on the open page site, because we figured that the best way to engage faculty in actually using the resource was to put them on it and to showcase them as well. And so we will show one video at the start of each faculty meeting saying, here's a new tool to learn about. It becomes a professional development engine, but it is also an opportunity for the students' work to get seen as equal, which is something that doesn't always happen. And they did the storyboarding and the filming and all those things. It's an open project. It has real audiences, and real audiences not just in the sense of the web, but real audiences in the sense of teachers and principals and faculty members who have a lot of power in these young pre-service teachers' lives. So they are really showing what they can do as learners and as producers, but ultimately as digital educators. The project is also heavily digital and networked. Those 4 students were in different countries this summer, as well as different cities. 1 was in Scotland, 3 were in Canada, but we were all in different places. This was what working together and having meetings sometimes worked out like, with 2 laptops going, because different people had different platforms that would work for them. And we used Slack as an organizing project management tool as well. So they also built their skills in working in that area. And it was focused on their practices and their literacies. All of the students who've been part of making the videos and those who are going to be part of making the podcasts, they've currently scripted those and will be recording them in January. Their understanding of how to engage with a datafied digital world and how to make sense of it as an educator and consider differentiation is fairly drastically altered by this process, as is like my faculty colleagues, the 5 faculty members who made videos. They were like, I didn't know this stuff. I didn't know about data. So it's a slow kind of subversive underground, let's talk about the problems in this digital world while also becoming more literate in it and using some of these tools well. And the big goal is, again, that deep analysis of data in terms of service. These are just examples of some of the scripts that the students had written and things that they want on the background. But you'll notice it says Mindomo is a freemium platform. You can use it for free, but you only get 3 mind maps. At a classroom scale, educators need to buy in. So if I'm watching this, in 3 minutes I can find out, okay, it says it's free, but it's not really free. Here's what it would cost me, etc., etc. What do I get? The next goal for this project is the podcasts coming up from the service learning students. So this is part of the assignment where it says script support from teams, tomorrow's comments. I'm asking them to make sure it's fun as well as serious and analytic. I'm asking them to analyze pedagogy and power relations while they're talking about what this tool does. And I think one of the tools that the podcasts will be about is Class Dojo, Dave, and I think you may be talking about that? I know, maybe, we'll see. But anyway, that's what's on the next page for us. And so for me, this project is really just a way to look at the web with students and to build open digital practice with them. Not because we're also not talking about datafication and data cultures, but because in addition to focusing on the bad things, which was kind of what we talked about yesterday in the workshop, I also want to focus on some of the good things and the ways that you can contribute to the web meaningfully, because I want my students to get the sense that that's worth their time and their energy as well. So I do have a live slide here. I don't know if anybody has any ideas about how you or we could help build open digital practice in your work. But everybody, no matter who you teach or what you teach, there are ways to engage students with authentic audiences on the web that still can be reasonably safe. One of the biggest gifts to me is actually my educator community, my networked professional learning community, because it means that I can reach out to a colleague in Spain, or a colleague in Egypt, or a colleague in Ireland, or a colleague elsewhere in Ontario and say, I would like to teach my students about Twitter. I'd like to have a Twitter chat, but I don't want to put them on the open web because, why would I want to do that? So could we do it together? And if we have our quiet little hashtag, the truth is no one is really likely to bother us unless we're talking about highly, highly political topics. And so I've managed to do that for years. As the web has become a little bit more of a garbage fire, we've been able to sort of ride under the radar of that and still build educator literacies for using the open web for participatory good. And that matters to me. So ProSocial Web, thanks very much for listening.